everybody. Thanks for coming, students and teachers and some architects that have, they came here today. And above all, thanks to Dietmar Eberle and Hugo and Ignacio Fernández Solla for coming here. It's something amazing that we have some guests like this today. So first of all, then also to give thanks to the IESE Business School for letting us this auditorium in this sort of sessions of lectures here with School of Architecture of La Week, and all the companies that they are supported, they are helping us, like Propamsa, Nocerámica, Cementos Molins, and Simon for helping us and support for these events that have been organized from La Week. It was not prepared, of course, but first of all, I would like to have a memory for the victims of the fire in Valencia happened last week. It's a tragedy. I think that we can't help to have a memory about this tragedy event. It's something that I think that all architects, we are still shocked, and it interpellates us for the responsibility that we have in our commitment with this discipline. So a memory or a prayer, you want, for each one of the victims that have happened in Valencia. Okay, this is it. So this is the third forum. You know, there is like the first one was dedicated for typology, and Romanov, Benjamin Romanov, he came here to explain about the skyscrapers that he was doing in Mexico. The second one, last one, it was something very controversial because it was dedicated to urbanism. And we dedicate these forums to a new shape of urbanism, and we talk about the line with that, with Albert Civit and Pablo Molina. They are involved in this job, and I think it's something that he has had many conversations for the last days. And today is about innovation. Today is about innovation that we have. That's why we have Dietmar Eberle and Hugo and Ignacio. I have prepared an introduction, a kind of academic introduction that says that to introduce the idea of the innovation. In 1775, a British engineer named Pritchard built what is possibly considered the first bridge in history, built in cast iron over the River Severn in the county of Shropshire, which is in England. These new technologies at that time that they were emerging offered the possibility of new forms of construction. These engineers must have thought that a malleable, industrialized material, much lighter than stone, opened a field that deserved to be explored. It is likely that Pritchard already sensed the great transformation of the industrial revolutions to come in the 19th century. Pritchard was motivated by the desire for innovation. However, Coolbrookdale Bridge, this example, today can be seen as an anachronism of architectural history. It is an iron bridge built under the geometric imagery of heavy stone buildings. The design of the structure was made with cast iron pieces that took the form of stone wasars. Wasars in Spanish is dovela. It's a French name that I think in German is the same, dovela, which work strictly under compression. The lesson we learn from Coolbrookdale Bridge is that innovation, despite all its uncertainties, paves the way for the improvement of buildings to provide comfort to their users. Thanks to attitudes such as those of Pritchard, stick technology and calculation systems based on the deformation of materials will later be developed. Today, we are immersed in another great transformation produced by contemporary changes. The global socioeconomic order leads to problems such as large migratory movements, climate change, the need for the production and optimization of renewable energies, or the growing scarcity of water in many territories of the planet. In the Western context, we face new business and professional structures, and the difficulty of young people, like most of you, in accessing work and housing, to name a few samples. Architecture is a determining discipline in all these issues. For these reasons, innovation is necessary. Today's guests represent responsibility for today's challenges. They work in a professional environment that manages to integrate improvement formulas. They do so based on their extensive experience, knowledge, and responsibility. But above all, they do it because they are able to formulate the questions correctly. A problem cannot be solved if there is not a good diagnosis. Diagnosing and prescribing, or put in another way, identifying aspects and giving answers is the architect's task. The design is the solution that materializes and culminates the architectural process. And I'm going to introduce the personalities that we have today. And I want to do something very exceptional, because normally when I introduce a CV, I'm very short, but Dietmar Eberle deserves like an introduction to let you know the dimension of the case that we have today. Dietmar Eberle defines himself as a realist and programmatic architect. He's realistic to evaluate the constructive reality, and programmatic because the objective of the design is to improve this reality. The result of this attitude, as Dietmar himself recognizes, can become poetic if it has an effect that goes beyond reality and has more to do with conscious intuition and feeling. After studying at the Vienna University of Technology, Dietmar Eberle learned his profession as a co-founder of the Vorarlberger Bauschule, it's a school of construction. After his start in Vorarlberg in 1935, sorry for the pronunciation, in collaboration with Carlo Baumschlager, he founded the Baumschlager Eberle Architekten studio, which expanded internationally with offices in Vaduz, St. Gallen, Vienna, and Zurich. Between 2008 and 2013, they expanded to Hong Kong, Berlin, Hanoi, Paris, and Hamburg. More than 300 employees, as he mentioned before, currently work at Baumschlager Eberle Architekten. This extensive office layout reflects Dietmar Eberle's attitudes towards architecture. The architect's presence on site is necessary to understand the cultural context and respond precisely to the needs of a building's clients and users. Practice and theory are inextricably linked in the work of Dietmar Eberle. Over the years, he has transmitted his thoughts to students as a professor at ETH of Zurich. To this day, his range of assignments includes visiting professorships in Europe, America, and Asia, as well as editing and authoring best-selling books on urban planning and design theory. In his teaching activity, he has been a guest professor at numerous universities, such as the Southern University of Nanjing in China, the Universitat Politècnica of Catalunya here in Barcelona, the University of Hong Kong, the Bessalen Academy of Arts and Design in Jerusalem, and the Polytechnic University in Madrid. Between 2003 and 2005, he was Dean of the Department of Architecture at ETH Zurich. Between 1999 and 2018, he was the holder of the ETH Zurich Chair of Architecture and Design. He has also been a professor at the University of Darmstadt in Germany and Syracuse in New York, among others. As an author, he has edited numerous publications dedicated to a variety of topics related to housing, architectural thought, and his own work. He has published with publishers such as Bickhauser Verlag, AV, las monografías AV, Springer Verlag, Editorial Gustavo Gili, and the Libria Publishing House, among others. He's an honorary member of the American Institute of Architects, AIA, numerous architectural and engineering institutions, and chairman of the LEAA Board of Directors. With him today is coming as well Hugo Herrera, piano. He was born in Santander. He's an architect from the Highest Technical School of Architecture in Madrid. Since 2019, he has been a partner at Baumschlager Eberle Architekten in Lustenau, in Austria, where he has developed housing projects in Austria and Germany, and as well administrative buildings in Berlin, Lustenau, Prague, and Yangon in China. He has also participated in health projects in Germany, Denmark, and China. Hugo Herrera is currently an essential figure at Baumschlager Eberle Architekten. And now, Ignacio Fernández Solla, he's coming from Madrid, from Movear in Madrid. He has developed his career in facade design and technology. Since 2004, he leads the facade engineering team in Arup, Spain, with ongoing projects in Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, and the USA. Ignacio supports design teams in the specification and construction of building envelopes. His experience is focused on lightweight and energy-efficient envelope solutions, curtain wall systems, double-skin facades, rain screen facades, photovoltaic facades, operational energy control, and responsive facade systems. He has participated in projects such as the Telefónica headquarters in Madrid, the refurbishment of the Palacio de Cibeles in the same Madrid, the Bridge Pavilion in Zaragoza, Qatar Faculty of Islamic Studies in Doha, Santander Call Center in Querétaro, and other places, and as well in the Congress Center in Bogota. His team is working on projects with Nomar Foster, the studio of Zaha Hadid, Jan Nobel, Richard Rogers, Juan Herrera, and Richard Meyer, among others. Ignacio has been visiting lecturer of building envelope systems at the School of Architecture in Princeton in University. He participates at Masters in European University, the Polytechnic University of Madrid, and the University of the Basque Country. Okay, with this, I have introduced you, and now, please, Dietmar, the floor is for you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and I have a very simple job today. I have 30 minutes to explain you 2226, and I hope it's a little bit maybe too much physics, but I hope you can follow. You will follow. And the second is, I want to explain you why do we believe that this is the future of architecture. Okay, as I want to tell you a few goals when we speak about buildings which are important for me, because I believe very strong, only when you have certain goals, you know what you have to do, what is the direction, and what is the wish you want to do. And the most important goal for me is, I'm sorry, I'm a lazy man. I want comfortable buildings. I like comfort. I like comfort in a lot of different levels, but this is for me very important. The second issue, what is also 2226 is, all this, which is very common now, gray energy consumption. The next one, which is also the operating energy you need for a building. The next one is, this is for me very important, to speak about life cycle cost, because when we speak about architecture normally, we speak about program, or we speak about function, or we speak about aesthetics, or we speak about simulation. But what we very seldom do, but what I believe is very important, we should speak much more about time, because building has nothing to do with next winter or next summer. And this is one of the big things what we were in the 20th century. In my opinion, there is a big mistake in architectural theory that we were always focusing about the program of a building, and we understand the program as the starting point to do a building. But when you analyze buildings, you should know one thing. The program has a lifetime of normally not more than one generation. One generation is 20 to 25 years. But the identity and the contribution a building can do for the identity of a city, which I believe in a long-term view is very important. The identity and these contributions to identity, they should have a lifetime of 200 years. And we go nowadays always to cities which are much older. And we start to tear down the buildings, what we did in the 50s, in the 60s and 70s. So we should consider what was wrong. What did we do wrong? And I don't have time to talk about this in detail very long, but for me, this is very important to understand the building, what we do now, with a perspective of 200 years or something like this. And when you think about these perspectives, you know one thing for sure: the program will change. Because there is no successful building out of history where the program was not changed. So maybe in a lot of terms, we believe still that to fulfill the program is the most important question, but I think this was the most important question of the architecture of the 20th century, of the beginning of the 20th century. In my feeling, the most important question for the architecture of the 21st century will be, what is the contribution of a building to the public? What is the contribution of a building to the atmosphere of a city, to define a situation, to generate a better quality of life in the public area? But this is a big issue, and I know that a lot of educations we still do is so much focusing on this understanding of the program. And the next one, you know, I'm a little bit anarchic. I like decentralization. I like that people can determine exactly themselves what's going around them. And no machinery, nothing has to do this. And therefore, we believe very much in decentralized systems in every level of development, what we do. And to make it now very short, I believe we put at the moment a lot of hardware into our buildings, which means heating, cooling, ventilation systems, and a lot of pipe and machinery and ventilation. And we want to replace all this technology by software. And that's what we do in 22, 26. And you know, this is for architects very nice, because nowadays, 30–40% of architectural work is only about coordinating all the different technological systems in the building. And when you don't have them, you don't have to coordinate them. And this gives a big help to have more time to think about your architectural values. And you know, how do we create a building like this, 22, 26? Okay, first of all, this is a very complex understanding. You have a little bit to understand the climate, which is very traditional, but when we speak about climate, it's a lot about radiation, it's a lot about temperature, it's humidity, it's carbon dioxide, it's air quality and things like this. I could also, I don't want to bore you, otherwise I can give you all the goal numbers for all these issues, you know, but this is a little bit too much maybe today. Okay, the second is, when we speak about comfort, this is a complicated question. When do we feel comfortable? Which kind of conditions we need to feel comfortable? In 22, 26, we focus on 4 different questions of comfort. The first one is temperature. You know, and this is very funny all over the world. People like the temperature between 22 and 26. They don't like 28 and they don't like 19. They feel well between 22, 26. And what is also more funny, I'm sorry, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but women like it warmer in average than men. But you know, all this is not research by me. There's a lot of research work about these questions. It's more about 24 to 26. You know? So it's a very small path where you feel better. The second issue, when we speak about comfort, is also very important, is when we speak about physical terms, it's only a question of carbon dioxide. You know, the carbon dioxide level, we all know this phenomena that people like to open the window and to have fresh air from the outside. Very simple. Why do they like the fresh air? It's not even important which temperature the fresh air has, because the fresh air has one big advantage. It has a carbon dioxide level of about 400 ppm. Carbon dioxide, which means 400 particles per meter. And in a building like this, when we will stay here a little bit longer, the carbon dioxide level will go up. Maybe in 1 hour it will be about 1,000. Maybe in 1.5 hours it will be 1,500. And sensible people start to feel this. They don't like the air anymore. It's not the temperature, it's the carbon dioxide level in the air which makes this kind of feeling to be uncomfortable. And afterwards we will all go out and enjoy the fresh air. Why do we do? It's 400. In here we will have more than 1,000. I know that these things are maybe for a lot of you very well known and very simple. Then there's another issue about humidity, that you feel well when you have about 40 to 70% humidity percentage. Not 30, not 20, not 90, but in this range. So the question will be, what do you do for humidity? Then you know about acoustics, and what is also very funny, you know about light. You like natural light. Everybody likes natural light. It's a very similar phenomena than when we have with carbon dioxide. Natural light is more appreciated than artificial light. And you know, all the big lighting companies try to develop artificial light in the spectrum of radiation very close to natural light. Even during the day and things like that. Okay, but that's fine. So, but I think it is very important to understand these conditions. And now, how do we do it? We only use two things. On one hand, we use the building, and on the other hand, we use the software. That's it. So you can say that 22, 26, a lot of people always have this impression that this is a low-tech building. We say the opposite, it's a real high-tech building, but we use the most modern technology which we have is digital knowledge, and is software, and not anymore hardware. And what are the main thinking about the buildings? You know, this is for architects very important. The building is very much related to the first sketches you do. Because in the first sketches you do, you determine the geometry of the building. And not every geometry has the same quality than any other geometry. So the geometry becomes very important to develop comfortable level. The other thing is very clear, it's about physics, you know, it's about G value, U value, and it's all what is part of this and things like this. And the third one, which is very important, is the thermal mass of the building. Because, you know, there is a very simple phenomenon. When you go to a basement where you have a lot of mass around you, it's all the earth, you always will experience that this basement is cooler than the upper floors. When you go to a tunnel, I'm sorry, we are used to tunnels, we have a lot of them. You will always find out it's only about 8 to 10 degrees all the year long. Doesn't matter what. But this is a question. But you also know when you have old buildings, which are quite thick, here in Barcelona for sure, in the Gothic part, then you recognize there that these buildings take quite a long time when you want to heat them up, and they keep warm also quite a long time when you want to cool them down again. So that the impact of the thermal mass onto the comfortable level of the building is dramatically. It's dramatic. And you know, the next one, how do we use the software? The software, first of all, we use sensors that in every room we measure carbon dioxide, temperature, and humidity. Second, we have a relation to the ventilations which I will show you afterwards in detail. So we need an access to the window so that we can determine the opening and closing of the building. And third, sometimes in extreme conditions, you need something like a backup, which means when there are extraordinary circumstances, that still the temperature is guaranteed, you know. For example, a very common extraordinary circumstance in Germany is when somebody goes in winter for 3 months to Mallorca and wants to come back in March, and he expects the apartment to be 20 degrees, you know. But there are also other externals, but that's a very important issue. Okay, so, you know, why did I care about these things? Very simple. When I was a young architectural student, you know, I'm born in the mountains, in a very small village, very poor village. And in this village, people learn one thing. They use the things they have in the most efficient way because they don't have a chance to get another one. So you start to be very careful and to look very careful on what you have. And I experienced when I was quite young, maybe that's too young for you, but some of you will also have experienced. This is the first oil crisis in Europe in the 1972. And this was a strange phenomenon that at a certain time, there was no oil available anymore. And so cars only went on, every country different, on Sundays or on Mondays and things like this. And I had a very nice experience then. I was driving from Munich to Vienna on the highway, and there were nearly no cars. And then when I passed the same direction again, about 4 weeks later, and then I saw that one lane of the highway was completely green. Nature covered and this kind of not used area anymore. And this impressed me very deep. So I had and I started doing buildings when I was very young, only 25. And even the first buildings we did in the end of the 70s, in 79 and 80, were already dealing with these questions. How to use the things you have in a more efficient way. And that's what you can imagine. I had this idea for doing, I knew in theoretical terms that this should be possible since the mid of the 90s. But, you know, first of all, you are busy, you work a lot, and I worked a lot and I was talking a lot and things like, I never had time to do it. But then in 2013, I did it. And you can imagine when you do something that radical, nobody will pay it. You have to pay yourself. So I built it on my own cost because I knew to persuade somebody that this should work is nearly not possible. I know, I even see, you even don't believe now it's possible, okay? But you can imagine it didn't exist, so it really was not possible. And that's what we did, and we built it in 2013. And how did we do it? And I know I'm much too slowly, but I want to go fast. Look, this is my understanding of the behavior of a building. You see, in every building, you have a blue line. This is the outside temperature over 1 year. Then there is a green line. This is the inside temperature based on the use of the building. Because, and that's very important to understand, you as a person, You do three things in a building. First, you are a heater. Everybody of you heats about 100 watt per hour. So then when the temperature rises in here, you are the heater. I'm really sorry. Okay, I'm the heater. 100 watt. Second, what is more interesting maybe, does somebody, this is a stupid question, does somebody know how much carbon dioxide he as a person produces in 1 year only by breathing? Not by cars and other things, only by breathing. Does somebody has an idea? Are there people who do sports? Those who do sports, they pollute a lot because they produce much more carbon dioxide, okay? But I can tell you, in average, you produce about 1 ton of carbon dioxide every year only by breathing. So, I'm sorry, we heat the rooms and we pollute the rooms. It's not somebody else, it's us who do this. And the third thing, which is also which is important for me, that this is a question of humidity. You are sweating every day about 1.5 liters. And this doesn't disappear. I'm sorry, it goes to the air. So you have a lot of things, and the impact of you to a room is dramatic. It's higher than the impact of the outside temperature. It's higher. And therefore, these sensors for the software are so important, because in different rooms there are different numbers of people, and this has different impacts on the behavior of the building. But you see, and the gray area there is this 22, 26, and you know, when you are an engineer, you look over here and you look over here, and then you add this and you add this, and this is the heating and this is the amount of cooling. When you are a lazy architect, you look over here and over here, because there you have a period where you don't have to do anything and the world is nice. And so that's what we try to develop in the first 20 years of our development, that we tried to make these periods longer and longer. The result over here is also clear, that the amount of energy you use will go down immediately, okay? And that's what we call the building optimization, what we do. But this knowledge is not from yesterday, today. This is a knowledge which was developed in a period of 20 years, okay, by doing buildings, measuring them, and things like this. Okay, now this is only for architects. When we spoke before about geometry, that by your design, you determine the comfort level of your buildings, much more than anybody else. And this you can calculate these things in very simple numbers. So every early design you do, when you calculate it with these numbers, you already know maybe it will be a good building, maybe it will be a bad building, maybe the use of energy will be high, maybe the use of energy will be low. So this gives architects a new responsibility of thinking about their designs. When you have the goal, you want to reduce the energy and the carbon dioxide footprint and all these things. Okay, and now this is this building automatization. I will not go in detail. And for me, this is only very basic. I'm first of all always interested in this first, what kind of temperature will be in the building when nobody ever will use the building. This is the behavior of the building itself, a result out of physics, geometry, and this relation to climate. The second issue, you always get a line, the green line is always inside temperature, the blue line is always outside temperature. You can get this by the use of the building. You know, you have an impact, as I told you before, on 3 different levels and things like this. And this is what the software is doing. The software makes the change from a curve like this to a curve like this. That's what the software is doing by managing the relation of inside and outside and what's happening in relation to carbon dioxide, temperature, and humidity. Okay, this is not so important, but that's okay. That's the building. Okay, and you know, the building is it's 6 floors high. All the building is about 3,000 square meters. And some of you were there. And okay, they always tell me, architects tell me they like the building. Okay, fine. Me, I like it also. I'm there nearly, no, not every day, but a lot of times. And you know, this is the layout, and what you see in the layout is one of these principles that you don't see what the rooms are used for. They are very open, and I tell you what is in the building nowadays. In the building there is, very fashionable, a yoga studio. Second, there is a fitness studio. Third, there is a graphic office. First, there are software engineers. There is a canteen on the ground floor, there is an art exhibition, and there are regular architectural offices also, okay? So, and there's an apartment also, because I believe very much in this idea of to do an open building, which should be open for the use according to the necessities of society. You know, and we have a big problem in every European country that our laws are completely against. Because our laws ask us to determine the use of the building according to zoning, or it doesn't matter, whatever. But this is a result of, but I'm very sure this will disappear quite soon, because nearly every intelligent man understands that this is stupidity out of the 20th century, so we will have to change it. It's okay. Okay, and these are, that's what the building can do. The building has access to this flaps, window flaps, will open and close. And I don't want to show it now in technical details, but you don't have any irritation in winter, because then the angle of opening will be much smaller than in summer, so the infiltration will be much, takes much more long, and you don't feel anything. And the backup system in this house, the backup system in this house is the electrical lighting. So when there is nobody in winter, for 3 weeks on skiing holidays, this is very normal in our area, the offices are closed on the 23rd of December, and the people come back on the 6th or 7th or 8th of January. So 14 days, it can happen that the building switches on the light. But there is nothing else. So the worst thing which will happen is that the building, and you know, then according to the neighbors, it's not after 10 o'clock and it's not before 6 o'clock in the morning, and you know all these issues, but that's the worst thing. And you know, this is a little bit very much according to this idea of philosophy, what I have. Use the things you have in the most efficient way. You have electric lighting anyway, according to our 24-hour. So why shouldn't we use it? You know. Also, if it's necessary, it's a bad situation for heating. That's all. And you can imagine that. You know, I don't want to speak in technical terms, but the amount of heating the light, when you do it in LED, you need about 6 to 10 watt per square meter to bring the building up to a level of 500 lux, sorry. And you know, so that's enough. But can you imagine the worst thing which happened? You switch on the light and the building is warm. That's it. You don't need more. That's it. Okay. So now I can show you data for, you know, I'm very proud. This is the best documented building in the world, because we have data from every room in a time frame of 1 minute and 30 seconds for more than 10 years. So when you ask me what happened in room number 19 on the 22nd of September 2015, it takes a time, but I can tell you. You know, so there is no other building which is comparable in the amount of data which we have based on this. But this is a byproduct out of this software what we used, and we developed the software ourselves. Okay, this is, and you see these curves look always different. You know, what is very funny when you have a look to the red lines. You see they go up and down, that's the carbon dioxide level, and this is a very stupid effect, you know. Nobody can tell you he was working on Saturday. Because you can see on the carbon dioxide, when somebody comes to a room, you see the carbon dioxide level goes up immediately, okay? So I never was thinking before about this phenomena, but you can see it. Okay, I don't want to see you. Now I show you very fast how the building is done. Okay, it's done in bricks, which is the most common material. It's very simple. So, you know, as an architect, I had some principle. Everything which is horizontal is concrete. Everything which is vertical is brick. Nothing special. And, you know, there are all floors are raised so that you can put water supply, wastewater, electricity and data to every point in the room. So I don't care what do you do with this room afterwards, because you have access to every point with all the media to this building. And that's how it looks like. And you see, there's an architectural hobby. So you don't see anything around the window. And this is extremely complicated. I think this is the most expensive part of the building, how to manage the water in front of the window. But this was very important, but it's okay, this is architecture. Okay, that's inside, okay, that's inside. And I show that these are atmospheres inside the building. Okay. You know, and this is only a personal hobby. You know, in the valley I come from, there are the best carpenters for massive wood. And I do everything I can do when I can afford. They're very expensive to do everything out of massive wood. And, you know, I like very much, these are the standard office tables in the office, and they are 4.25 meters, and they have no screws, no nails, nothing. It's all about pressing. It's all about knowledge, how to deal with wood. That's a little bit my thinking, what I would like to have also in architecture. When you think long enough about the things you use, you will find out that they are much more intelligent and have much more opportunities than you have. Okay, I show you now a few things, very small. Okay, now this is not small. This is a university in Luxembourg, 100 meter long, 100 meter high. And this is the first high-rise building in Europe, no mechanical ventilation, no cooling. And this only has a very small backup heating, that's it. And you know, yes, that's the building. And you know, this is the situation in which it was built. Is an old steel plant, so it's a lot of steel. We use this material. Okay, and the biggest hall in there is 750 people. And you know, it's all complicated, but I like this building because the government of Luxembourg was ambitious enough to do not the stupidity which was normal. And you know, you can imagine that this is not easy because it's not about us. We had a client, the representative of this government, who was a very ambitious person, and he did it, and it's in use now for many years. Okay, and there you see, these are the leftovers of the steel plant. Okay, and everything in the building is only steel and concrete. And I like these materials, you know, so finished. And you know, this is another important building for me personally. This is even older. And I have a client, which is a woman, who has a small harbor at the Lake of Constance. And every time in autumn, she came to me and said, I earned a little bit of money. What do we build this year? So I did 7 projects with her. And this was also one. But according to this very close relation to this client, this was the first project in my life where I dared to do no technology at all. And this building is not usable 360 days a year, but maybe about 320. And that's, you know, it's a toilet with a meeting room. Okay, and you know, this is something which I like a lot, that in our area we have so wonderful craftsmen. Because when you don't have very good craftsmen, you cannot do something like this. And when you would ask for a price, complicated, but with this craftsman we could do this. Okay. And now we do social housing. Okay, but I want to do, so this is already built. This is social housing. No techniques anymore, nothing. And it's in use. This is all very small. And this is in Zurich, which is, it's nearly finished. The opening will be in September. It's about 27,000 square meters of this kind. And we also do, this is what I like a lot, we also do an office building for one of these cantons in Switzerland, for government, also even bigger than this one. And they told us, and in the opening speech of the construction site, they told, we want to do and to show our people and our industries and our companies how the future will be. They believe very much in this because it has such objective advantages. Okay, this is in Geneva, I'm sorry. This is in Lucerne, there is a school in there. This is, you know, 22, 26 is very nice to renovate old buildings. Because the old buildings which were done before modernism, they are perfect for 22, 26. Here when I have a look to this city, you know, a lot of old buildings you could renovate with this very easily. Okay, I go for it. This is a worker building from the year 1908, who only had 38, because this is a worker district, so everything was very poor. And they only had 36 centimeters of bricks as a wall. We did not do anything with the wall. We did not do any insulation, nothing. We only changed the windows and implemented software, and we insulated the roof. You know, that's all what we did. Okay, these are the advantages, what we see. And you know, for me, this is a very nice advantage. This is the amount of technical area in a building in relation to a normal building. And this is very interesting also for people, because when they don't need these technology areas anymore. This is about life cycle costs. This is not what we calculated. You know, maybe in Germany, there's the first time a kind of norm about life cycle cost, and the people who prepare these norms, they always use this building as an example. And this is the energy demand. That's what, that's what you said before. It's okay, that's maintenance and great. Okay, everything which I talked about in the beginning, I could also give you numbers for it, you know, but this is too complicated. That's what we do. Now, you ask me, is this possible in Barcelona? And I checked the data in Barcelona, I'm sorry, but You see, this is the average temperatures in Barcelona. These are the day temperature, I'm sorry, these are the night temperature, and the green one is the average temperature between day and night, the 24 degrees. And in Barcelona, you see over here, no problem at all, over here, no problem at all. But what is very interesting in Barcelona, that the night temperatures, even in July and August, are low enough to cool down the building. So you would not have to do anything in Barcelona except an intelligent management of your building by an intelligent software. That's all. And you know, okay, I don't want to, but it would be very easy to do in Barcelona a building in this comfort zone, only by using the natural conditions which you have. But I only did this for preparation for today. I wanted to, because I knew all the people would say me, it's too hot in summer, okay? I knew, but so I checked a little bit. Okay, so that's the areas where we do this 20, at the moment we are working at about 40 projects like this, and these are the countries in Austria and Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Poland. I would like to do something here in Spain. Very simple. Okay? Okay. And I want to say thank you, and I was talking too long, and I'm sorry that I didn't show you any images, only telling you a little bit about physics and the relation of different parts of a building. Now Hugo will do the images. Thank you.
I see it over there, but not on the big screen. No, okay. So, yeah, thank you very much for the nice invitation. It is, I'm 15 years working together with him, with Mr. Eberle, so it's still for me kind of complicated to talk after him because, I mean, he has much more experience and he's very eloquent when explaining what we are doing. Anyway, I would like to maybe show you some images that can inspire you or maybe to push you into this nice art of doing architecture. This is some chalets or kind of a hotel with a restaurant that I was, especially in emotional terms, also involved, that I did together with my colleagues in Lustenau, and so this is the first part of my story. This is in Vorarlberg. Vorarlberg, for maybe some of you don't know, this is the most west part of Austria, very related to the Alps, so it's kind of almost Switzerland. And as he was saying, since I arrived there, I was 25 years old when I arrived there and I started to develop my career. And it is really amazing the level that all these handcrafts, but not only carpenters, but really plumbing, electrotechnicians, etc. You really have the chance in this area of the world, even if it's very small, to work with a level of professionals which is unbelievable and that really makes your life easier, and it also makes concepts like this 2226, which actually 2226 could be understood as an holistic approach of architecture, because there are a lot of things coming there together. Independently of how you could explain the concept, you are dependent into having these super nice windows, into having this kind of walls. So this is really a region that if you want to experiment into doing, let's say, new architectural concepts, that's the perfect background for that. And this is, in my opinion, sometimes, you can correct me, Dietmar, the story of this company, which is really related to some experiments which were done there in Vorarlberg, that amazed people, and then it was spreading, and they were repeated in another scales all over the world. That's how I understand it, and I'm very proud that I really had the chance to experience all this, because sometimes I have the chance to experience this kind of really small, high-quality projects. and also to be able to bring these ideas to other places in the world, to China, to the east of Europe, etc. You see these very nice chalets. You see the restaurant is the big space that you have in the middle, covered with this roof. Of course, you can explain a lot of romantic things about it. This is kind of an explosion of view, these restaurants, and you have these chalets which are placed following the topography, etc. So, I mean, I think this is, at the end, one can say something, and I'm developing, of course, ideas that he's saying. He was talking about doing buildings for the next, or developments for the next 200 or 300 years. I don't mind if you are ambitious, you can say something like this. And he was talking about flexibility, because this thing of the function that can change, they should be sustainable, because no one wants to pay expensive buildings to maintain. And the most important thing that you should always remember as an architect is to do beautiful things. It sounds maybe very banal, but the beautiful things which end up having a very big acceptance from the people, from whoever sees them, have the tendency to survive for a much longer periods than other buildings that are hated and are ugly. So even if it sounds very strange, if as an architect sometimes you feel lost and you don't know how to go on or how to go up with sustainability or how to do a sustainable building, just do a nice building, and maybe this is the highest contribution to the environment. So anyway, of course, I mean, what can see, and here you already see this kind of fantastic details which are not only related to nice architectural drawings, but you really have to find the carpenters who bring, you see this suspended ceiling over there made out of these wood pieces, and of course it's prepared for in acoustic reasons, etc. But please consider how all this, or I can show you a better picture over there. Take a look at the corner over there, how all these little wood pieces are coming to make this abstract, absolutely perfect feeling. I mean, this is something that you should value. It's not only about drawing architecture, but about having this environment for being able to develop such nice buildings that we are very proud of. I will show you, sometimes, once more, we go for these little experiments to do big buildings in the world. These are 3 towers that we had the chance to build in Yancheng. This is a city which is around 4 hours from Shanghai, in the north of Shanghai. And once more, here we bring a lot of principles that we try to establish for a lot of our projects. You see over here, it might be really interesting the following. You see, in China, they make something which is very wrong, also related to the function. You see over there, you see all the buildings that you see. I guess you identified already our 3 buildings, which are in the middle of the image. You see that all the buildings are kind of parallel elements orientated to the south. In this case, the south is over here. This is horrible, because this means that the people that were projected these buildings, they were not interested in anything else but in the function. This means, in this case, that each of the apartments has a perfect south orientation. So when you develop a city only based on function, in this case, is about housing, who has a south-orientated facade, then these are the horrible consequences. There is no quality of the spaces. There is no hierarchy of spaces, because there are no values anymore in between these buildings. Everything is the same. So our little contribution in this case was, as you see, these 3 buildings that we are placing over here. These are the only ones that at least they generate a space in between them. I know you really can think that this is not related to sustainability and to the future, but it is a really important decision what we are doing in this case in urban terms, which is something which is going to last, let's say, for the next 200 years. These are very heavy concrete structures. So it was our priority to guarantee that we are creating something nice, and once more, is a contribution to the city. It cannot be anymore this kind of autistic developments which are only focusing on themselves. I will show you some of the images. And also related to the flexibility. This is a housing development, but you see that from the appearance, this could be everything. This could be offices, this could be, I mean, whatever. It even looks like a headquarters, but as you see, it always interested us a lot, this idea of abstraction. Abstraction, and I will explain about this image right now. One could say that abstraction is something which is not needed or as a banal issue, but if we want to guarantee again how long our buildings are gonna stay, this idea is also of being beautiful is also related, of course, to timelessness. And abstraction could be easily related to timelessness because you are not taking any decision in terms of mode, fashion of an architectural language, which could be, let's say, the hype of the moment. So we always had, we have always a tendency to make abstract buildings. Once more, in the university, you sometimes feel very comfortable when it's abstract, etc. But it really makes sense. It doesn't need to be brought to the edge, but not to be related to a fashion or to the mode or to the language or to the architectonical language, which is, let's say, the hype of the moment, could be a good way of making the building to survive a lot of time. In this case, there's a funny story in this image that maybe you find absurd, but I really like. You see these buildings, if you could build something like this, and we did a building very similar in Zurich before this building. This building is composed, as you see, of this kind of very horizontal stripes. And if you would build something like this in Europe or in the, let's say, in America, you would go for sure for an aluminum facade, or you will go for a precast concrete elements, etc. And this is how we did it, for example, in Zurich. But then the problem is that you have always gaps in between the elements. It is nice, you should have gaps, but I was always personally very irritated by this building in Zurich, that it has this kind of horizontal feeling, but it's always divided into gaps to separate the prefabricated concrete elements. It's easy, I mean, it should be like this, etc. But in China, we found the way of doing it as abstract as possible. As you see, there are no gaps at all. This is unthinkable in Europe, and it's a perverse story that is really not nice to say. They are painting the building all the time. This is a cast concrete on site, and they hire, really is unbelievable, and they are painting into white actually all the time the building all around. This is the only way that you can get this, especially, I mean, super abstract feeling in these dimensions as you see over here. These are not renderings, these are real pictures of a building. And if you think it's a render, it's just because of this, because you see nowhere gaps in these horizontal elements. You see this really, I know it might be a little too much and childish, but this ambition of doing abstract stuff that it looks really like a 3D model and bring it to this point, I find it actually a little perverse, but also, yeah, kind of attractive. I would like to tell you an idea very related to the 2226 and this image. And I think this is very important for you as students to understand the following. There is these are the trees which are in front of our building. This is the office I spend most of my time. There are ideas which are more, or let's say, attractive, independently of being truth or being the truth or not. For example, if you talk about a sustainable building, it is much more easy to say that sustainable building is something which looks like a tree. This sounds absurd, but it is really like this. So if I have to say that a building is sustainable, it is much more easy to say that the building is made out of wood, that the building is green, that the building is something light. It's a very, I mean, it's an association in the brain at the end that it works very, very easy. And it is a problem that, that happens actually, that there are ideas that just because of being more attractive, they are much more accepted. And this is the high contrast that we are, I mean, I don't know, that we are facing in this image. The tree and the solid building. If you are the, let's say, if you have to present to your company or in a political way a sustainable building, of course it is much more easy to show something which is light, transparent, green, made out of wood. And this is one more the attractiveness of the idea. But attractive ideas, they are not always true. And this is something that, in my opinion, you should always, check and really think about the facts about the reality. I will explain you the following. This is when we are working in architecture. We have this kind of handbook where when we are facing 22, 26 projects, so that we really try to bring this to the basics. I was involved in a lot of big projects, etc., and you know there are these certifications all the time. So there is BREEAM, LEED, it can be silver, gold, etc. And over there, there's always kind of a person and a woman comes and she has like a big Excel table. And over there, there are really 150, 200 parameters, and she's always talking about these parameters and what you should change, etc. But at the end, it is impossible to make architecture when you don't have a clear hierarchy of your thinking of what is important and what is less important. And maybe the secret of being a good architect is only related to that. It's only related to have a clear mindset, to organize in your mind what is more important and what is less important. So when we're doing the building, I try to go with my team to the basics and really try to make compact buildings. So it's just about dividing the area of the facade in relation to the usable area that you have. Or also the percentage of the glass is about relating how much percentage of glass I have in relation to the percentage of the usable area. And what's more, I repeat myself, but always please think about facts. 10 days ago, I was doing a building, I'm doing a housing building. And yeah, it is very efficient. It is like 8 apartments per level and a tower. And then Mr. Eberle came to me and then he said, is this an efficient building? And I said, yeah, it's very efficient. And then I started to talk ideas. It's very efficient because it's 8 apartments per level and it's like a tower and it's very compact. He said, no, give me the numbers, give me the facts. And then we started calculating the thing. So we started calculating which was the area in relation to the non-usable area, the corridor. We started calculating the perimeter, the facade in relation to this area. And then we got to a number, and this was the explanation which was satisfactory. The facts, and not the ideas of how compact or what was the imagination of this was made out of wood, etc. And I really encourage you to be passionate about the facts, about not being seduced from ideas, which once more, there are a lot of attractive ideas. But the truth doesn't need to be related of how attractive an idea is. And especially when it is related to sustainability, I think there are a lot of ideas which are easier to sell than the ideas that might be actually true. That's the statement in this relation. And then about the future a little bit, this is a huge building that we are developing when we are using, of course, 22, 26 is a key issue, but you see that from the very beginning, we are focusing here into doing a really compact building. So the span of the buildings is around 18 meters. So these are the modules that we are repeating all over. It is as compact as possible. And what's more, it is sustainable, not because afterwards we are gonna implement whatever complicated technology, but because from the very beginning, the parameters that we are taking over there, of the compactness of the building, of once more, which is the relation of the square meters of envelope in relation to the square meters of usable area, is under control and carefully thought from the very beginning. Of course, as you see, there are a lot of things over here, like when you build in the middle of nowhere, it's very important that you generate an identity, no? And what's more, a little bit like in the Chinese project, we are generating kind of a heart in the middle of the development so that all the buildings have a point of orientation. It's not just placing boxes nowhere, but to generate an identity in the very middle for the overall development, as you see over here. And now we are testing, I mean, this is what I'm doing right now with my team. We are trying to taste different facades and different appearance of this. Also, or I come back, I will leave it over here, of this 22, 26, because of course, once more, one cannot just stay. Now I could, it would be contradictory what I say, but one cannot just stay in these hard, super hard principles, but at the end, it's about doing very human architecture. I really find amazing this challenge that when we go to the big scale, like we are doing over here, big scale, especially in this or super big scale, because this is over 100,000 square meters. I mean, you have to think carefully about repetition. You have to have elements, of course. You have to have modules that you are gonna be. I mean, it is a must that you have to repeat these elements in order to make this kind of composition. You have to have a very regular structure. You have to have a very regular facade. I mean, you have to repeat elements, and yeah, this is something. It has to be like this because of the cost and because of a lot of reasons when you work in this huge scale. And I really see the goal, and something that it might be really or a very personal way. What I try to do in the last years is how to make human the big scale, but not giving up, of course, with this repetition of modules and with being standardized, etc. It is really easy. I mean, in the small scale, there's no problem with the standardized elements that you repeat, etc. But the big scale can get bored. To be human, to have the appearance of being complex and human, but still having a high degree of repetition and a simplified way of planning, I understand it as a goal of the big scale. I mean, we could talk once more. I'm repeating here, but yeah, I would like to leave it over here. Then I'm shorter than Mr. Eberle, and then you can talk further. I'm glad to discuss you afterwards with all of you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm here trying to represent a different view, which is going to be a little bit difficult because I coincide with many of the things that have been presented today. But still, I will try, okay? We are a large firm of engineers, in principle. In fact, Arup is the surname of a person who existed. His name was Ove Arup. He was Danish, even if he was born in Great Britain, but he was from Danish family. And the story is that Ove Arup was a contractor, prefab and in situ concrete contractor before becoming an engineer and opening his engineering firm. So we are nowadays a group of practically 20,000 engineers, planners, architects as well. But the main core of our company at the beginning was a person whose knowledge was on how to build. And from that knowledge, he became an engineer. And I think that's very interesting because somehow what we have been listening to this afternoon, this evening, is about architecture that can become a method of construction as well. We saw the bricks, we saw the elements. There is a system behind that Dietmar and Hugo haven't spoken to you, but it's very interesting. This group, they have a system company within the group, which is very interesting and very risky as well. We have never done that, okay? After 75 years, we have never dared to create a system and sell it, okay? However, there are some similarities. We are moving into areas that are not only architecture or just engineering or just construction, but mixing a little bit between one and the other. I'm going to speak in my 15 minutes only about architecture, or mostly about architecture, because that's something we also do in our firm. But of course, it will be mixed with more general views. Where should, oh, there it is. Cedric Price is a well-known architect from the 60s and 70s, and he apparently mentioned this: technology is the answer. Those were the happy years of high-tech architecture. So that's clear. Whichever is the question, technology is the answer. This is the way we were, not myself, because I was very young back then, but this is the way the architecture developed in the years of Norman Foster, Richard Rogers, Nicholas Grimshaw, Renzo Piano. And these were the days where our firm, Arup, became well-known internationally, because we were doing high-tech projects, and we were among the few companies that were able to deliver that. And that's what made us famous. So somehow, I bring this because it is a little bit of a, now you can see it with a smile, no? But it's our original sin. We believed that complex technology was the answer, and we provided complex technologies to the architecture of the days. And we know, because we have seen it, that most of those very complex buildings, well known in London, in Hong Kong, and in many places, are not working well. The vast majority of these buildings have big troubles. Let me just give you one example. I'm sure all of you have visited the Pompidou Center in Paris. The Pompidou Center has just been closed for the third time. It's going to undergo strong renovation works that will take 3 years. The cost for this renovation is similar to the construction cost of the building the first time. Okay, this is not the first renovation after the building was opened in 1969 or 1970. It's the second renovation. And the previous one was also very long and also very expensive. Okay, so that's the place where we come from. And I say this not as guilt, but just as the recognizance of a fact. We have participated in a kind of architecture that was excellent in many ways, but if you measure it by the ideas of today, this architecture was not functioning. When Cedric Price made these comments and had these glasses, it looked like fun, and they were all very great people. We tried to also be nice, fun, and good people, but altogether we were not doing exactly what was required. And it's time that we say it, okay? Just not to repeat it. This is older. This picture may be from the 20s or early 30s, probably the 20s. And these were the days, precisely Dietmar mentioned, the 1920s, exactly 100 years ago, when our architects were starting to discuss the modern movement, remember? And the idea was, remember, less is more. And of course, the current question is not less is more, but how can we achieve more with less? That's the real thing. And we use this picture just because it reminds you that you can do many things, like, for example, picking these large logs with a very, very simple and old-fashioned transportation system. And this may be part of the answer. Of course, I'm speaking in an abstract way. So, less, but better. Not very different, but let's see how can I make it a little bit different from what we have seen so far. First of all, architecture is organization. And this is one of the little things that we can say for sure will remain and have always been important. This sentence, first of all, designing means giving things an order. It's a sentence by an architect which probably most of you have never heard of. And I invite you to just pick the name, K. Fisker. He was a Danish architect. He was very active between the 1910 and the 1950s, but he was before the modern movement. And he built in brick, and his buildings, by the way, are very much 22-26 in the shape of these buildings. Very, very, very good architecture. By having a look at this guy, which was not a modern architect, you understand many things of the architecture of the Scandinavian school. Okay, so modern architecture was not a revolution, was an evolution of something that was being done properly. And of course, the picture is about prefabrication, okay, but the idea is given by a guy who never prefabricated anything. He worked with bricks. This is something we believe, and I'm sure some of you have seen it. Have you? Have you been presented to this idea of the layers? This is a drawing, a sketch, prepared by a non-architect and non-engineer. His name is Stuart Brand. He is a crazy guy. He's an American, and he does whatever. He is a guy who is very inventive. And he wrote a book in the 90s, which I strongly recommend you. The title of the book is How Buildings Learn. And the idea was that buildings have a life once you give them outside to the public. And they evolve and they change and they do their own stuff. Of course, the people using those buildings do this stuff, but that's the value. We as architects stop our work, and then the building somehow keeps growing and moving and changing. As Dietmar said before, function stands for some years, and then things start to change. Okay. Now, the idea in the book, and this was only a very simple drawing, a sketch, was this. In Stuart Brand's names, inside a house, a building, there is stuff, furniture, carpets, etc. Then comes layout, and this is, in the original name, was space plan, so the organization of the building. Then came the services, so the installations that provide the building's use. Then came structure, which here we say geometry, to be a little bit more generous. And finally comes the skin, the outer side of the building. And of course, buildings are located in a place, and that place is site. As you can see in Stuart Brand's thinking, all these words started with an S. Stuff, space plan, services, structure, skin, and site. Okay? Now, this is good for a scheme, and of course, when we think on this idea as architects, there is a relationship between the large scale, the medium scale, and the small scale. And you could, if you wanted, add these ideas, the layers, to these three large scales and consider them as master plan, building, and unit. Of course, if you wanted to be very simple, you could say, and this is the risk, you see, you could quickly from this say, okay, design should come from here to there, okay, left to right. And then this is where I start to diverge from Dietmar. Formulas typically are nice because they're simple, but please disregard formulas. Formulas are too interesting, they are too sexy. And sometimes they are great for some cases, but not for others. Okay, so don't read this as that you should be designing from the context to the geometry, to the skin, to the service, to the layout, to the stuff, because that's not the intention. Okay, so beware formulas. Well, after that, I'm going to give you our formula. Okay, it's not a formula, it's just like oh gosh, I don't know how to translate that. The 10 commandments in the Catholic religion. So these are our 6 commandments, okay? Just 6. The Arab 6 main points that we think we should apply and we can apply to anything we do as architects, engineers, or consultants. Improve human health and well-being, okay? transition to a zero carbon economy, sounds good. Adopt circular economy principles. There's a little bit more of thinking down there. We will see it in a minute. Enhance community resilience. This is a new word. We have to understand what that means. Create social value. Sounds good. And finally, respect planetary boundaries. There's nothing strange there. All sounds very reasonable. Okay. The problem with these commandments is that you read them and they all sound fine, like in the Catholic religion. The problem is how you put them in place every day. And of course, the understanding of the commandments varies with the context, with the conditions. But still, it's good to have at least some principles. And these are now our principles as a firm. So let me just give you an example of just two of these, okay? This has to do with human health and well-being. And of course, this is very, very near the intentions of 2226. We are in the same wavelength here. So our plan is, okay, how can we improve human health and well-being? What are the key elements? Light, of course, the indoor climate conditions, the acoustics of the space, also outside, not only inside, the user behavior, how users use the building, and the visual quality of the place we are designing. So this gives us like some recipes, and again, I warn you against recipes, because recipes are good, but then you have to change them, okay? It's not the same cooking with a Thermomix that cooking with a similar robot that you bought in Lidl. They don't work the same. You have to adjust something, okay? Same here. So beware of recipes, but we have our recipes as well. Let's move now to the other one, which was circular economy. This is something that we speak a lot these days, and you will see that is an idea in the air. And we tend to complicate ourselves a lot. And I think these are a very good summary of what circular economy means in the built environment. And you can say it means four things. One, design for long duration. Wonderful. Another point of agreement. That's where we totally agree. If your building lasts not more than 100 years, you're not doing things right. Okay, aim for long. But then there's a second thing. Should everything in a building last 100 years? No, you can't have glass lasting more than 40 years, 35. That's the reality. You can't have a gasket or a part of a service lasting forever. Their life cycle cost on the life cycle of different elements is different. So we have to use the duration of elements in a clever way. It's not as simple as saying everything will last 200 years, because many times we can't afford to build for 200 years. So there's limits to this idea, and we have to play with those, and that's when the complexities start. Design to minimize resource use and avoid waste. Fantastic, we all agree with this as a principle, no issue with it. It's difficult, and that's what we have to do. And to be honest, we are a disaster right now. In the Western world, we create waste like crazy. I'm speaking about our work, built environment. I'm not speaking about consumption in food, etc. Design for adaptability and flexibility. Of course, what you're going to design, if you end up acting as designers, is containers, not buildings, but just containers for human beings to use, the way they see fit, the way they will see fit in the future, not the way you imagined. One of the buildings of K. Fisher, the architect I mentioned before, was originally a hospital, and now it's part of the University of Arnhem in Denmark, and it's not being used as a hospital, not anymore. Okay, that happens, so you expect things to change. So flexibility is good. And finally, design for disassembly. This is very important, and that's another point where I humbly disagree with our colleagues here, because the thing with 2226, all the buildings that we have seen in the practice from Dietmar and Hugo, and allow me to just create some differences. they are solid, which is very good. But on the other hand, how do you transform that? Of course, you could say, well, there's no need to transform it because the intention is for the buildings to remain there for as long as possible, which is true. I buy that idea for 22-26, but I'm not convinced for the China thing. I don't convinced. Something that you have to paint all the time is not a good thing. And you knew, Hugo, that I was going to mention that, didn't you? I'm not convinced. You can do that. You have to do that with a bridge, with a very large bridge. Then you have to paint it every day. Yes. Your building is like a bridge, isn't it? You could say that. Anyway, I don't like that. Okay? So these are the principles, good for just one element, circular economy, good. And I'm just closing here. And I would like to go back to the first principles. And Juan mentioned in the introduction that this was going to be a session about the future of architecture and about innovation, those two things. There's a saying by another person who was active in the 90s. I don't remember the name of the person, but the sentence is very good. The future is already here. It's just that we don't know exactly where it is. You have to find it, okay? There are many possible futures. They are all around us, and some of them will become the future. So the work is to find it out and to try to get there, ideally, sooner. So we don't know. I agree with Dietmar that shape is very important. It's what architects do. You define shape. That's what you have to do. If you stop doing that, you stop being architects. But once you define a shape, there's much more to be done afterwards. And that's where the problems start. So I used on purpose this image, which is part of the presentation of the two images that we have today. One is 22-26, very regular, very German, if you allow me. And this one, which is crazy, and it is a building in San Francisco. It's the California Academy of Sciences, and it's a project by Renzo Piano. And this is a project where we worked as engineers, and I have a very fond memory of this building. And the thing I would like to mention, that's why I have it here, is as much as the windows in 22-26 are a very important part of the concept, and of course they are, and critical, and the dimension and the position is very important. These light openings were decided after the design was concluded. Initially, these light, what's the word for that? Skylights, sorry, thanks very much. These skylights were continuous glass elements. And then, I wasn't there, but I can imagine the conversation. Somebody told Renzo, hey, Renzo, why, this is very complex. We can't do glass in double curvature. It's very complicated. And these guys are American, so they're practical people. Why don't we just do point skylights? And then Renzo must have thought in this Italian style, point skylights, what's that? And I can imagine the American guy, just circular things, just all the same. And then Piano saying, okay, that's an idea. Going back to the hotel and coming back the day after with the drawing done, okay? So my point here is, and this is the last recipe, non-recipe, formula, non-formula, you never end doing a design. We have to be open for changes. We have to be open for variations that we didn't expect. So the problem with formulas is that they restrict our own capacity to keep thinking. And this is an example of a part of a building that now is part of the signature of the building and came during construction. Of course, Renzo Piano will never say that, but that's how it went. Okay? And with that said, I'm done. Thanks very much. There it is.
Muy bien, gracias. Okay, now here we are. Say, thanks for your lecture explanations, and well, I think that you introduced some debate yourself. I don't know if you want to have the answer of answering yourself about the comments that you introduced. I think that the first thing I invited you to do, if you want to answer something that Ignacio said about your work, or you want to answer. I can introduce more things you want also. And here we have two protagonists. First are you, and second are students. And students, they have prepared many questions for you. So I would like just to have first comment with you, but just let's and give the chance to the students to you want to, yes, okay. Just a comment yeah, to introduce and to warm up the auditorium. Well, I'm really impressed with your speech and the thoughts that you have introduced. I'm going to summarize into three things. First of all, this idea of new idea of high tech or low tech, based not in the technology of you're introducing, but in the way that you introduce the software and with the data in the utilizing of the building, the use of the building, the activity of the building. I think this is something that is in one sense very new, but in another sense is not new, because you are going to the most traditional systems for the classic systems that we learn in. So I think that the achievement that you are doing is by this new idea of high technology is achieving the classic system of the renewable system for cooling. This is the first thing that we would like to highlight. The second is something that I really I consider is that the silly regulations that we have in building systems. I think that we are victims of a lot of regulations, not only urban regulations. We have a lot of mechanical regulations that they are obligating us. For example, now in Barcelona, in housing, we are obligated to have some renovation of ventilation. They have increased the cost of the building. They have increased the maintenance of the building, whatever. So I think we have a big challenge, and you mentioned that. And the third one, that is going to be my question, is that it's difficult to be radical. Dietmar, I say that, and to be radical, you have to do the experiment yourself with your building, and you promoting and developing yourself the building. So we're in Barcelona, in Mediterranean atmosphere, in Mediterranean environment. I don't really believe in this diagram, sorry, from Barcelona. I think temperature nowadays is higher than you mentioned, because this was maybe 30, 50 years ago. Now is terrible, We don't have even fresh in summertime. I would like to.
And you before.
I have to go to that point.
You can generate other data. Have look up. This is the most actual data you find about Barcelona. But you can tell me they are wrong. Okay, do better one. I have no problem.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Maybe this is my perception when I live here in Barcelona. Maybe, I'm sure your diagram is right, but my perception is that it's difficult to achieve. Let me introduce some debate about that. But the question is that we have now in Barcelona a lot of buildings for hospitality and residential buildings. I'm an architect, I'm working as you, and I think it's really difficult to me to convince to developers to develop these kinds of solutions that you are exposing here. What would be your recommendation for us to try to introduce this system? Do we have to do first experimental solutions, or what is your recommendation?
As Hugo said, I think there's, at this moment, use the knowledge which exists and use this in a proper, serious, honest way. But use the knowledge. But the problem is that a lot of us don't change. We do not look at the knowledge which exists. We think there's not so much to experiment, okay? That's to be very pragmatic. I think it's quite easy. Go down to the information. Look, okay, I'm now I'm allowed to say a few things?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, first, what we did is not a presentation about our understanding about architecture, only about the relation of the 20th century to the 21st century, very shortly. And I'm very, for me, this is very complicated. Look, I know a little bit about architectural history, okay? So I was a little bit irritated when you as an engineer try me to explain architectural history, okay? I think this is not so polite, to be very honest, okay? This is only my personal feeling. I know Sky Fisker very well. I know also his students. I know a lot of these things. But you didn't say where the end of this is.
Okay.
You understand? We don't have to, but maybe you all know this thinking of Sky Fisker has one product which you all know as a result. You can still buy it. It's USM Haller. USM Haller, that's furniture. The most elegant furniture. This is exactly out of this school. I'm sorry. I know even the person that. So
we both admire.
But you know, for me, it was a little bit irritating that an engineer comes to me and explains me architecture. Okay, I'm sorry. I was touched because I could also add that this is a very, very individual point of view, what you show, and this has nothing to do with for example, with our understanding of architecture. I didn't talk about. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Second, and you said something which I liked very much. You know, you said principles are nice to listen. That's also what Hugo says. Yes, but I would add, but sometimes they are wrong.
Yes.
They're basically wrong. And you know, a few things I've been reading, I would say when we would have the time, we would discuss, and I think some of them are completely wrong. I'm sorry. Some of them are completely, in my opinion. Okay. And this is, and I feel a little bit, you know, that in our architectural discussion today, we should go more, we are in such a privileged situation. There is such a good history of architecture. The documents of this history is perfect, but we don't use them anymore. We don't study them, we don't go for, and there is a high level of knowledge that's called state of the art in our background. And we always are sitting here to invent something. I think that's very wrong. First of all, we have to discover what is really state of the art, what really exists, and therefore I'm thankful what you can see that there's much more than we consider to be invented. And that's a little bit, you know, when you ask me what to do, be serious, be honest, go to the point, but use the things you have. There's much more than you believe. There's much more. And that's a little bit a strategy. I think you also pronounced it, and we agree both on it. We have to learn to use the things we have. And knowledge is one of the big things we have in a more profound, in a more serious, in a more honest way. And that's what I would like to say, you know? So when you ask what to do, very easy, study. As much as possible, go down to the basics. And there is so much material, you know, and architecture is so wide and so interesting and so inspiring, and you have access from art, from history, from sociology, from mathematics, from techniques and things like this. The richness is dramatic, and everywhere you can find something. And that's where we should learn to use the knowledge we have. And this is a lot. And when, once in your lifetime, you will be able to add something to this knowledge which already exists, then you will become part of the history books of architecture. But this takes time normally, okay? And you know, it is so, I don't want to frustrate you and nothing. I want to say, use the richness of our discipline. And there is so much. And there are also phenomena like nobody knows, like Fisker or others, you know. There is so much. And that's what we should learn to use. That's what we should learn to use, okay? And that's the same about data, you know. We should use the data we have. We should go for them, we should ask them, we should question them, everything is fine, no problem. But we should bring the things down to the basics. And a little bit, you know, maybe, I stop immediately, I only tell something to you. Maybe you recognize, also in Spain, that engineers are believed much more than architects. What is the only difference? Shall I tell you? They use data and make big books. That's it. And we should do the same. I'm sorry. This helps our profession much more.
Have you noticed an architect using engineering thinking and an engineer talking like an architect? This is what makes this conversation interesting.
Yeah. No, you understand. We should do the same. Why don't we do?
Yes, yes. No,
Why don't we work more serious, more proper, more honest? And then I believe also that the acceptance, and I'm sorry, acceptance in our real world is expressed by payments, will increase. Very simple. And I'm sorry, I'm always proud, and that Hugo told me yesterday, or today, I think, I'm always proud when he tells me, for example, we do a very big development in Prague, and the client there, he told us, Hugo, you don't believe, but I never paid half the price which I paid to you for anything else which I did in my life. And then I asked, why did he do? Because he understood the seriosity, the honesty, and the performance of what we did. And he started to like it and to honor it. You know? I know not all clients are like this, you know, but these were very professional clients who had a lot of experience, you know. And I think that's what we should do in our profession. Use the things we have in a more efficient way. I'm sorry. And based on this, when you are afterwards able to invent something, you're a genius. But first of all, use the things you have. But understand there is so much what we have in architecture. And we should be so proud about all this knowledge what we have in architecture. And he can even pick the things he likes. That's nice. But this is a very small picking. You know and I know. It's not a big issue. Yes. You know? But I'm sorry that I've been talking too long for your question. But I hope students understood what I tell them.
But that was the idea of the question, invite you to talk. Yeah.
I would like to defend just one point. He was attacking, just very shortly. Because he was commenting this point that we always try to defend this, let's say, hierarchy of what is more important and what is less important when doing architecture. So you have this diagram with, let's say, the city or the urban planning, then we jump to the structure, then we jump to the envelope of the building, then we jump to the unit, etc. And you were not convinced that you were not convinced that it was probably right, and then you came with other, let's say, other list of values. I mean, what we have to, usually, this system of hierarchy of values that we have, of course, I know that is very dependent on the case. So if you're doing a hospital, of course, the function plays a bigger role than maybe other things. But it is very important when you are doing architecture that you have a hierarchy of thinking. It comes a lot of situations that you have to decide at what you put as a priority. This is the key issue. And in your list, you made a list of values, and there was no hierarchy. You just talk about 6 points about, and there was nice points, all of them, but there was no hierarchy of them. So this means I don't find it helpful when someone is really facing the task of doing architecture. It is much better to have, let's say, a hierarchy of values to take decisions.
But Hugo, I see it different. As a company strategy, you have to offer a lot, everybody can choose.
Exactly.
That's the strategy. as a principle for our discussion within architects, we should be more serious than a company strategy. We should be more clear about what is important for us. Everybody has to decide for himself, you know, what is important for us. And I think that's a little bit, Aarhus is the opposite example of what I'm saying. This was a very successful strategy. Now we don't have to discuss, it's very serious. But I believe that we have to have more clear principles and hierarchies, what we go for. And we do not have to offer every stupid client all possibilities. We have to go for clear things. And if the clients don't like, for us, it's not a problem. For Aarhus, it's a loss. That's a big difference. I'm sorry. That's you have to have a very different strategy than we have to do. Okay,
No.
or that we can afford that we do it.
No, but of course, this is, let's remove the practical side in terms of clients, because we all have done quite well there, so that's not a problem. But I honestly think that having principles is needed, and we share that. I am doubtful that we need a hierarchy in principle, okay? So my point is, we should have principles, and we all have them. That's why I call them commandments, because the commandments are principles. But then selecting which ones should be the number one, number two, number three, depends on the context, depends on the client, depends on the condition. So I think there's nothing wrong with not having a hierarchy. You can have your today's hierarchy of values, which is fine, as long as you're ready to change it when things change. And this is, I think, this is a thing that we all know just from age. You learn that you have principles, but you're ready to change them. And at least you're ready to change the hierarchy. I would be very happy with that.
But our hierarchy of values is again based on facts. It's not our ideas, etc. But if you analyze the last 300 years of architecture, you can see which decisions were lasting 300 years, which decisions were lasting 30 years, and this is the set of values. If you say that there is this urban planning, and there is the structure of the building, and there is the facade, and there is the function, and there is the finishes of which color the wall has, and you analyze as a fact, let's say the last 300 years of architecture, and you see the lifespan of each of these values, as you call, then you can really say that the ones who lasted 300 years are more important than the ones who lasted on an average 5 years. I think this is a fact, but I will not take it as an idea, but as a fact also, which are the decisions that imply that this decision is going to have a durability of 200 years or 20 years. We take it as a fact, our set of values. Yeah.
But I want to add something very serious and very honest. You know, I appreciated very much that through this image of price, you showed the intellectual background. This was the 60s.
Yes.
The 60s believe, doesn't matter what, the technology will solve it.
Yes.
And that's the shit we did now for 50 years, and we are still in the same shit. Yes. And you don't tell me here that this was a very complete wrong development. And why should we do it again? Or why should we take it serious? I honor these people. I know that they did it in a serious, honest way.
Of course, they
weren't
trying to cheat anybody.
We really have to say,
yes,
this is a completely wrong direction.
Yes, I said.
And you know, Aarhus will earn a lot of money only to refurbish all this shit they have done before. I'm really sorry.
Yes,
it's
true.
I want to say to students very clear.
Yes.
In the development of architectural history, this was a certain period, but it was wrong.
Yes.
It's deeply wrong. It does not solve anything.
We're completely in agreement there.
Yeah, I know, we don't have any, you know, and I know you have the obligation, you know.
No, but it's much before that. I was amazed when I went with my wife to visit the Sears Tower in Chicago. And that was a building built in 1971 or something like that. Single glazing, okay, you could say, okay, single glazing, that's before the energy crisis of 1973, more or less you can accept it. But then, studying the details of the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank by Norman Foster, a great project from the early 80s, same thing. Okay, Hong Kong's temperature is not as radically high and low, but having single glazing doesn't make any sense. So these were mistakes of which I can take my part of responsibility, because probably if I were there, I wouldn't be raising my hand. And it's very important that we mention this openly. Our profession, and I speak jointly of builders, architects and engineers, went from the 1930s into the 1990s in a state of self-convincement that we had the right ideas and the things we knew were the right things. Oh gosh, we made a lot of mistakes, which are now incredibly costly to solve. And of course, the point is just to remain vigilant that we do not repeat the big mistakes. Okay, we can make, of course, we have to make small mistakes, and that's part of life.
Do you get the contracts of the? Do you get the contracts of the buildings that you have to solve that you no, actually?
But don't get into that. I think we are talking about big mistakes, okay? And this is true, and we're all part of that. We have to be aware of it, and we have to share it clearly.
Well, I think that these principles has been
But you know, I want to only when we speak about architectural developments, you know, because I mentioned only this technological orientation as one part of architectural development. And before this technological orientation was this modernism, believing in function, in functionalism. Mm-hmm. And you know, the technological developed architect only tried to compensate or not to care about the mistakes because they believed strongly technology will solve it anyway. And I could tell you examples, you know, and I know we don't talk about. But I believe that this functional architecture, which is the basic of this
20th century,
is in the same way wrong, but it's still taught and used at universities to educate students. But I believe this is wrong. This is wrong to think about this in this way, in very dramatic and very basic understanding. But may I tell a personal, I did a book about this, because again, about something you said we should not do, about there's a book in Amazon about from the city to the house. And I did this in 2008 or 9 or something like this. And you know, this is sold out quite a lot of times. And I'm only looking as an old man, what's the price for this book now in Amazon? And it's about 10 to 20 times more than it was when you bought it new. So I thought maybe there are a lot of people who think similar. Otherwise, they wouldn't buy this book. And I believe very strong we have to change our thinking from the public to the private and not the other way around anymore. I don't believe in private architecture. If somebody builds a small villa for him somewhere in, I don't care, but for me this is not architecture. For me this is not architecture. This is only playing around. You can do, or for example, this is also very radical. I also believe to do the layout of an apartment is not architecture, because I believe the owner or the renter or owner of the apartment should have the possibility to organize himself in this area in the way he wants. For me, this is a personal, but I know that we are all trained on this and we work on, and I personally, I like to do this because I was trained in doing this I did more than 40,000 apartments. I know what I talk about. You understand? But when you ask me honestly, we should focus on the real questions of architecture, and that's the contribution to the public. What do our buildings contribute to the public? And this is in the 21st century. In the 20th century, we still were focusing on the program and all these things, etc. But that's only because you are students.
Yes, yes, yes. Let's go to the students, exactly.
Okay.
You said container, which is related to this idea of not doing any layout.
Okay.
Yes,
now,
yes, I agree with that. Yeah, yeah.
We have here some teachers and students. Okay. Do you want voluntary? Yes.
Well, first of all, we wanted to say thank you for your presentations and for your time. We are so glad to have you here. And well, Mr. Eberle, your firm advocates for regenerative design principles and the circular economy. So my question goes for Mr. Fernandez, because he talked about circular economy. And I wanted to ask, how do these concepts translate into urban planning and infrastructure development? And what potential do they hold for creating more sustainable and equitable cities? Thank you.
That's a great question, because to be completely honest, we still don't know. Circular economy as a principle
Circular economy.
has basics, reutilization, not just reducing waste. That's clear, that's okay in a production process. But when you bring it to the level of urban planning, urban design, we are still unclear. It's a new concept, and you have the work to make that feasible, okay? I don't have answers to that. Same with resilience. It's such a new comment, a new idea, that we still don't know how to apply that concept to a large scale. Of course, you can say, okay, flooding is a risk that is going to increase, so we have to protect our buildings and try not to build in areas prone to flooding, okay? But if we want to go beyond that, beyond the obvious things, we yet don't have examples, and that's what makes these ideas so interesting and so challenging. So I think these two things, resilience and circular economy, are still waiting to become important elements of the architecture and the urban planning that we have to do. Okay, it's pending. That's what makes them so interesting. I'm sorry for not having proper answer, but that's the thing.
Okay, may I add something to this? Look, this is a very dangerous expression, because when we speak about economy, normally the cycles in economy are very short. And this is a very big demand that the cycle stays short, because this increases our wealth. Mm-hmm. When we come to buildings and to the built life, to the built environment, the cycles become much longer, much longer. The time frames become much longer. And this is a big question, what happens? You know, when we speak about buildings, maybe you speak about the time frame of 30 years or 50 years, or certain aspects of building, you know. And then I think that, and that's at least my experience, that we should trust a little bit in people and in mankind, that maybe things will happen to what we use now, which we cannot even imagine nowadays. I can give you a very simple example. For example, you know, all these carbon dioxide discussions, you know, and there are quite a lot of, in my opinion, very intelligent people who believe that carbon dioxide will replace oil and will be the new basic substance on which we build our future. There are some things developed like this, others not. you know. But when this, maybe, gravel, for example, is one of these products they do with carbon dioxide. But when these things happen, all the discussion, what we do now, they are nothing good for. But when we speak about economy, I think we should always add the time frame which we talk about, because this changes the point of view of what we can really say, in a very serious way. Okay, but there's one principle now everybody knows: to prepare this life cycle economy. It is very important to give up all combined materials, so that you can separate every material afterwards in its own identity, and it's not polluted by other materials. This is a very simple principle which you can add also nowadays. And for example, this is very funny, one material who is doing this completely the opposite, it's wood. When you use wood, this is all glued.
True.
And the glue, you cannot separate from the wood anymore. And the glue is highly dangerous. I'm sorry, you cannot burn it, it's highly dangerous. So this is so funny that on one hand we speak about wooden buildings, but in the end we should talk about the glue. And the percentage of glue in the woods we do now for buildings is extremely high. And it's very poison and it's very dangerous. So I only wanted to, by this example, I only want to show how complex this issue is. This is not so easy to answer, but to separate the things, that's a simple principle. I'm sorry. So,
Thanks. Who's next?
Hello. So considering that 2226 is a fairly small scale building, and that you also have experience with urban design, Mr. Eberle, can the concepts of sustainability used in this building 2226 be applied to larger scale projects in order to possibly even allow entire cities to be designed without the need to expend energy on heating and cooling?
Absolutely. I mean, this was in the last example that I was using. It is like this. Once more, the 2226 starts over there. Let's say, I would not say an experiment, but the one at least that was financed from our side. And of course, I mean, we are doing it in a larger scale. The latest that we are opening is around this 20,000. It's a little less, but 15,000 square meters in Zurich. And this that I show at the very end that we are building in Germany, of course, this is, I mean, the concept works independently of the scale. We had to start in this small scale, but it is not related. I mean, you can't really do it in a large scale. It's again related of each of the spaces of this building in the percentage of usable area that you have in relation to the facade and how this facade is conceived and can be applied to millions of square meters. Yeah.
Okay, Octavio. We need a micro for Octavio. I think he's on the first line.
Student.
Yes, he's still a student. Yeah.
I'm not anymore a student, even if I study every day, because we have to improve and try to be better at any time. No, I really agree with the things you explained, and I agree too that when the clients ask us in our office to make a very functional building, they are asking for shit, because they think they don't understand that beauty is a function. And I always try to explain to my students that really probably beauty is the most sacred function we can add, like architects and the things, no? I think probably you will agree with me that the most sustainable building is the building that can change of use easily, and at the same time can be used as much hours per day than other ones, because even if it is more expensive, but during the day it's a school, after it's a residence, in the night it's a nightclub, and can change even many uses in the day, this building, it will be really sustainable in the future, no? And I would like to say two things to my friend Ignacio. I have a great remember of your last lecture. I hear you in Barcelona. When you are talking about the order of the city, the building, the interior design, and which order we have to go, if left from right and right from left, no? That I once learned that there are two kinds of sculpture. The sculpture the stone, they take a piece of marble and they take off part of the stone, no? And the people, the sculpture, they use mud, they are adding material to make the different shapes, no? But the architect, we are the both kind of sculptures. We have to go. You don't agree?
No, but
No, of course, we can talk later. But architects, I think we are this kind of two sculptures that we have to go back and forth from the big scale to the little scale, because finally we will find the point of the things we want to say.
Just very shortly before.
Yeah, of course.
I'm strongly convinced in my 15 years of experience with this, not that much, that the best buildings were ever done by subdivision and not by adding things. Of course, there's a center balance, but I'm really sure if you see whatever building you love from El Escorial, a palace, or whatever, the good buildings were always done by subdivision of a big thing and not by adding stuff and going up. I really strongly believe on this as a hardcore principle when doing architecture. Maybe I'm wrong. I just
No. But you are 15 years old making buildings. I'm 39 years old making buildings. But that's not the problem. It's not the problem of time, but of convictions, no? And another thing I would like to share with Ignacio and with all of you is that once I learned when I was reading a sentence that I think it was fantastic, that they say, when I knew all the answers, life changed the questions.
Yes, that's great. Yeah.
And that's really like that, no? Or the final chapter of the Invisible Cities of Italo Calvino.
Fantastic.
That is fantastic. And right now I'm writing another book about the relationship between literature and architecture. And yesterday night I was reading and I say, really fantastic. In the last chapter, Italo Calvino says that the modern times, they are really a hell. So we are living in a hell, and our only thing we can do is try to discover what's not a hell in the hell, and give him the possibility to grow. And I think this is a kind of motto that I would like to share with all of you.
Fantastic.
And really, just sorry. No, okay, I stop on that. No. Okay, no, it's really the last comment. But when I was a student, I had no idea. Of course, the easiest way of doing projects, it was taking the room program and starting to put the rooms and the buildings and one over each other and do something out of that. But if you become mature in the task of the architecture, you have to react on the city and on a much more sensible, big stuff. And to put the program together, that's too easy. Yeah, that's all. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Okay, my question is for Mr. Fernández Solla. Every year we invent 1,000 new materials, yet we keep seeing the same solution in contemporary architecture with steel and glass finishings, among other energy-demanding solutions. Consider your background in Norsk Hydro and knowledge on the energy-demanding production of metals. On top of your expertise in facades, can we keep using these high energy-demanding materials for the sake of aesthetic in contemporary architecture?
Oh, wow, my God.
Thank you.
You've done some study on my background. True, before becoming part of Arup, I was part of an aluminium company which produced big aluminium pieces and profiles and those things. And your question is very relevant, or your comment, because it's practically, you're putting the ball for me to just hit. On that same term, we have been overusing energy because we thought energy was not too relevant. And definitely, both from the side of metals, which was the first part of my life, and from the side of building envelopes, which is what I've been doing for the last 20 years, there is a connection between the way we produced materials, which was not being worried about the energy embedded in the production, and the way we produced buildings or designed buildings, which was not being worried in the way we needed operational energy. Okay, and these two concepts go together, and they should, and I really like your question. Energy in a building is required 2 times. First time, when you decide which materials you're going to use, and you employ those materials to build the building. So that is what we call embedded energy. And that's my part as a metal supplier, okay? During many years, until practically today, the percentage of energy in most of the materials we use in construction has remained constant. Some materials good, low levels, some materials very bad, high levels of embedded energy, okay? On the other hand, the amount of energy we need to operate our buildings has been steadily going down. 2226 has an incredible number that hasn't been strongly mentioned because Dietmar didn't want to just talk too many about numbers, but I was really surprised. 45 kilowatt hours square meter. That's amazing. 45 kilowatt hours means that this building can be functional with 1/10 of the energy required in the very bad buildings, 1/5 of the energy required in reasonable buildings today, 1/3 of good buildings today, 1/2 of the best buildings we do today. This is operational energy, okay? My point is, judging from a distance between the 1990s until today, we have been able to reduce the operational energy from 400 kilowatt hours, which was incredibly bad, down to 90, okay? And that's the best we can do today. Of course, except 2226, okay? Now, this means that we are more or less tackling right, at least in the good direction, the energy required to operate our buildings. And that means that we are reducing the amount of glass in our buildings because it was crazy. You cannot have a 100% or 80% carton wall. That doesn't work. You lose too much energy, okay? Now, the next big question is about embedded energy, the energy in the materials. And there's a lot of work to do there. And again, formulas are not good. We have to rethink what happens. Again, I like the idea of timber, engineered timber, this cross-laminated wood has lots of embedded energy because of the fabrication process. Okay, not as much as steel, okay, but still more than you thought. So we have to be careful, and there's a lot of work to do to reduce the embedded energy, okay? By the time we were able to really reduce the operational energy and we select the materials so that the embedded energy is minimum, then we have reached in terms of energy, that's the goal. Okay? And I have to admit, this is pretty much what we have seen in 2226, because the embedded energy of those materials is quite low. Together with the duration, good. Incredibly low operational energy, fantastic. You can do the calculations for 100 years usage, and then you have a good number. So that's a task.
Very nice. I think there is a last question because it's Felipe.
I have a question, for Dietmar Eberle and Hugo. Of course, you have not get into the technology we're saying you were talking about, but we understood that you were managing the atmospheric conditions, weather conditions, in order to have a balance inside. But you didn't talk about producing this kind of well-being inside and energy and so on. So a glass and a thermal mass is a way of producing heat and storing it. No, so I guess that's something beside it, and I would like you, as far as we have time, to develop a little bit to go in that, in your buildings and in your technology.
Okay. Kannst du mir ganz genau, ich habe es nicht genau verstanden. Sorry, I have
Ja, er meinte eigentlich, oder das Konzept, oder wie funktioniert eigentlich das Konzept? Er sagt natürlich, du hast die Lüftungsklappe, aber sonst, oder? Wie behaltest du das Gebäude warm oder kalt?
Okay, wie ist das warm oder kalt?
Ja, wie behaltest du es warm oder kalt? Ich meine, wie funktioniert das?
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you precisely. Okay, on the very basic, okay, the cooling of the building is mainly done by night cooling. And this leads to this, that we keep the mass of the building. And that's what the mass, we don't have any special mass. It's only 24 centimeters of concrete, that's it. So, and 76% of all the mass in the building is only the concrete sealed floor. And the interior walls are 12% and the exterior walls 12%. So the big impact is the concrete ceiling. Okay, and that's what we use for night cooling. And this is always a question. Therefore, the shape of these flaps, they relate very much to the capacity of air which we need for night cooling. This is the key question. It's not for ventilation in winter. And the second is, as I told you, you don't believe, but you can measure. When in winter, and our winters are much more cold than here, you know, we have regularly minus degrees. It's like this. First of all, people, as I told you, heat the building. Second, what do people need? Laptops. What do they need? Screens. What do they need? Refrigerators, coffee machines, and small servers also, but only small ones. But that's enough, or even in the apartment, that's enough what they use for living, because every kilowatt hour of electricity, with exception of the coffee machine or something else, is transferred into warmth, into temperature. I cannot change, you know, I cannot change. So that's, normal living is enough to keep the temperature in winter. Okay, I can give, if you like, I can give you numbers, but I don't do, but you know, okay, there's a very simple phenomenon. When you do a nicely insulated building according to local standards, not in England, because in England they would not need any technology since ever, you know, because the climate is so mild. Sure. This is so privileged, I'm sorry. But when you do this in mid-European climate, you will find out that 70% of the energy demand is only related to ventilation demand, and only 30% is related to transmission. Transmission, what you lose through the walls to the windows, etc. Okay, but, and this is a basic idea of 22-26. When do you need ventilation? You only need ventilation when you are there. But when you are there, what do you bring with you? You bring 100 watts. Maybe some bolded people like him, they do about maybe 120, okay? But normally about 100 watt, okay? And now I ask myself, very simple, how much of fresh air does a person need in 1 hour to have a nice, to feel comfortable and to keep the carbon dioxide level low? And, but I think you will, you know, when I was young, the engineers told me 60 cubic meters per person. When they became a little bit older, about 2000, they started to tell 30. But the funny story is about this question, there is no empirical research until now. There are only 2 projects at the moment ongoing at 2 universities because this is very complicated to do research about this, because it takes a lot of years and things like that. But the people who are involved in this, they believe mainly about 25 cubic meters of fresh air you need to keep the carbon dioxide
Less
level low,
than before.
because that's the carbon dioxide you pollute. Very simple. And now the question, my stupid question was, okay, when I have 100 watts, down to which temperature I can use 25 cubic meters of fresh air? Because then, when it's not more than 100, it's zero. Because you bring 100 with you, you use 100. So in the end, this is about a temperature level of 1.6 degrees. So down to 1.6, you can always do natural ventilation when you do not more than this 25 cubic meters per person. How do we measure the 25 cubic meters? To be very honest, we measure them not, because what we are interested in is the carbon dioxide level in the room. And that's what we want to keep, because ventilation from inside and outside is sometimes related to pressure differences, to wind, and so it's very difficult. So how long the window should be open, nobody can say, because according to other circumstances.
I see. So you measure that depending on the sensors of the CO2.
Yes,
The flaps,
this is so
react
important.
depending to the
So
CO2.
the main steering of the flap is not about temperature,
Yes,
it's
yes,
about
yes.
CO2,
That's very
because
clever.
CO2 brings the feeling of feeling comfortable, you know, just having this feeling of fresh air, a feeling of, and so, okay, but you understand. So down to about 1.6 degrees, nothing happens anyway, because you can open, therefore we need the sensors to calculate exactly the carbon dioxide level in the room and to do a react, and therefore this has to be very decentralized, because in one room you can have 2 people, in another room nobody, in another room 20, you know, and then they have to react very differently, you know. And so now the question is, what happens under, you know, this 1 or 2 degrees? First of all, you have to, in Barcelona, you don't even have this temperature. I mean, in England, you don't, very seldom, not important, okay? But in our climate, you have certain periods, you know? But for example, the average temperature of Zurich, only as an example, in January is about 0.7 degrees. So what you have to heat really is the difference from 0.7 to 1.6. Switch on the light. For half an hour more, it's enough. This happens automatically. You know, the problem is always like this. When you start to think about these things in very clear facts, then you find out the phenomena are extremely small, extremely. And therefore it doesn't make sense anymore, even to run only the circulation of the normal heating would use much more energy than when you switch on the lighting for half an hour or something like this. You understand? So I don't say that life does work without energy. I don't say, but the question is, we can use it more clever. That's exactly what we do. We can use the things what we have more clever. That's always the same. And that's also what I believe in architecture. We have so much knowledge in architecture. Use it more efficient.
Thank you, Dietmar. I think that we have to finish. Okay, the summary is knowledge and honesty. I think I will try to transmit it to the students and my people in my studio. And finally, let me say you that it would be wonderful that you design a building in Barcelona. It would be a great contribution for all of us.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.